Got really quiet all of a sudden. How's everyone doing? Good? Yeah. I'm going to wait for folks to settle in and we'll get started on this beautiful evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here at the Fine Arts Work Center. My name is Terry Kihu. I'm the Fellowship Director here at the Work Center. And tonight we are excited to present the fourth Fellow Friday Showcase of this fellowship season, an evening to celebrate the art, the fiction, and poetry of four brilliant creatives, including two visual arts fellows whose stunning exhibitions opened tonight in our Hudson D. Walker Gallery. I'd like us all to take a moment right now to recognize and congratulate these two individual artists, Callan Hale and Anne Claire Rogers. If you will please stand so we can acknowledge you for your work. Congrats on your beautiful showcase, and thank you for sharing your work with us. Please go check out and spend some time with their work if you haven't already, and if you have, go back for seconds. Tonight, we're also so lucky to hear readings from two impressive writers at the start of their careers, fiction fellow Ariel Miller and poetry fellow Raso. Yeah. They'll be reading in that order and welcome to the stage by a member of their cohort. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage fiction fellow Robbie Herbst, who will introduce our first reader. I'm sorry. Sorry, Ashley, yes. Apologies, Ashley.
I could be Robbie. All right. Good evening, everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce my friend, fiction fellow Ariel Miller. Ariel will be reading from her novel, The Arowana, tonight. Throughout our time here in P-Town, I've had the pleasure of hearing snippets of this novel during our fiction fellow plus Pio group hangouts. Without giving too much away, it centers on exotic fish peddlers who trick Border Patrol, trot across the globe on fish-related smuggling adventures, or find themselves lost in a maze of neighboring Tim Hortons. Every week when Ariel showed up with a new passage to share, I was delighted by how much wit and edge she could pack in one line. It was hard to choose favorites, but I tried, so here's two. A boyfriend is best used as a display case for his girlfriend, like a dress that flattered the figure and appeared more expensive than it really was. Solid line. And the other one I have is, every woman knows crying is erotic. Facts. Not only is my friend obsessed with fish, I do not for a second buy that this level of research is solely for the book. She has an insatiable hunger for excavating inner truths, so persistent in getting to the bottom of an emotion that it can only be described as licking the plate clean. I'm taken by the way Ariel doesn't shy away from the vulnerability that makes us human, things people don't normally go out of their way to bond over. She has a way of putting to words our deeply buried fears, our anxieties, our longing, doubts, with such precision and nuance that you feel feverishly exposed. She has named what she seamlessly achieves, moments when you feel that whole risky envelope of your animal body. I want to share a passage from Ariel's short story, Uncontrollable Urge, which illustrates the electrifying quality of the humor and heart, grace and precision you find throughout her writing, her dexterity to also use setting as a projection of the internal landscape. Powdered cement rose in little slow-motion clouds around my ankle. It was the kind of place that made you want to whisper or say nothing. So we walked quietly. We had sex quietly against a cinder block wall on the 7th floor with the windows yawning out onto a still canal, the 1-800 Cars for Kids billboard, the expressway, the pylons of the power station in the distance, the pink sky, all of which reflected in luminous squares on Maddie's glasses. And he didn't bother looking away. He let me stare and stare. It was only when we were walking home that I realized the coat wasn't around my waist. "Should we go back?" said Maddie. "No, no," I said. We walked in silence another block. Then he bumped my shoulder. "You don't have to be sneaky," he said. "Cry louder if you want." But I wasn't crying. Although it was a physically analogous reaction, it couldn't really be called crying since I, experiencing it as an entirely private phenomenon, didn't want to call it anything. Not only does Ariel flex a deep understanding for her characters, they're rendered with so much compassion that you find charm in their inadequacies, feel triumphant in their trivial pursuits, such as watching them take a hot piss, and above all, you find heart in their unraveling. And I'm beyond delighted that we all get to share this experience together tonight. Before I go, I'd like to share her bio. Ariel Miller is a writer from Chicago. She holds an MFA in fiction from Washington University in St. Louis. Her work centers around themes of desire, obsession, and transgression. She is currently working on a novel about wildlife trafficking. Please join me in giving Ariel a warm welcome.
Hi. Hey. I'm going to read some excerpts from my novel in progress, which Ashley introduced for me. It is about fish and fear and desire and wildlife trafficking. So I'm going to read an excerpt from the beginning and then one that's a little farther on. The only thing you need to know about this first excerpt is that the main character is named Jude. She's just agreed to move to Buffalo, New York, to watch an acquaintance's at-home exotic fish breeding business while the friend travels overseas. The friend has just left, and now she's alone. What Jude needed was to find some occupation. Other people had them. There was Anjali, who applied directly to a program where she would get an advanced degree in psychology so that she could become a family therapist and lay her weighted blanket on all the people of the world suffering from trauma. When Anjali wasn't studying her chosen occupation with bright and serious interest, Anjali had so many preoccupations, so many ways to fill time. She watched TV shows featuring beautiful people, cunningly disguised as everyday people, succeeding at their careers, nurturing brave romances despite every misunderstanding. She went to the gym for Pilates class. She sat at the kitchen table with her Pilates classmates, crafting imaginary relationships between the different instructors on the weekly schedule. What would it be like if Paloma dated Sebastian? Okay, but what if Paloma cheated on Sebastian with Kelly? Jude had at some point been a part of Anjali's friend group, but only because she was friends with Anjali. Together they would go out. Jude would stand on the sulking side of the room, waiting for someone to find her reticence and hesitance both compelling and attractive. In those moments, hadn't she wanted to be like Anjali? Hadn't she envied her as much as she feared her? If she could be like Anjali, wouldn't she be happier? But Jude had an occupation. Her responsibility was toward the dumb, gaping fish all around her. She woke every day to their repulsive needs. She squeezed fertilized eggs from the mouths of mouth-breeding females while their muscular little bodies flapped frantically in her grip. She rinsed filth-coated sponge filters in a bucket until the water turned the color of pond. She uncapped foul-smelling food pellets and unzipped bags of frozen bloodworms. The worms and pellets drifted down from the surface like snow. The fish whirled. They ate in a frenzied way, or in an absent-minded way, but that was just how they moved and not how they felt, because surely they did not really feel. They were alive, but their movements seemed born of a life of emotionless decision-making. In the afternoons, she took dazed walks through the neighborhood. Buffalo looked like a photograph of a city taken in the 80s, a photo then hung in a shop window to bleach in the sun. The maples were stubby, the houses low. The caution tape, still strung around abandoned construction projects, had shredded at the ends to a fine tassel. Rabbits darted across grassy lots. On a hot evening, she passed 4 people on their porch, a man and 3 women, all looking frizzled, gray, and used, all of them in tie-dye, all eating fudgesicles, and all of them smiled and waved at her. Otherwise, she rarely saw other human beings. This part of the city had the feeling of the earth after rapture, as if a sizable portion of the population had up and vanished, which was, for Buffalo, exactly what had happened. The only acute bursts of activity and commerce in the neighborhood centered around the 3 Tim Hortons within walking distance. At first, it seemed like dim corporate oversight to have planted 3 franchises so close together, yet their lots and drive-thrus were constantly jammed with cars, so much so that they disrupted the traffic pattern on the road. Jude often got lost by mistaking one Tim Hortons for another and taking a wrong turn, finding herself not back home, but at the high school, or the empty office supply store, or at the edge of the enormous train yard that gaped abruptly out of the landscape, a place where she could see the sky end to end. Were they bored, the fish? Were they unhappy? Didn't they seem sad? Didn't they lack purpose, amusement, even fear? Lincoln's tanks had gravel beds and, where necessary, a few spindly plants sticking straight up, like palms in a mall food court. These were provided for the fish to lay their eggs on or the fry to hide in so that their progenitors would not eat them. Jude watched them sometimes, trying to tell if they had moods, if they had arguments, if anything ever changed. And eventually something did change. Something happened to the blue and black cichlids, something at first unnoticeable. They developed a rash, a contagion of raised white spots. It took a while for Jude to spot it. She wondered if this were some kind of egg, a step in the mating process Lincoln had forgotten to tell her about. Most of them had only small clusters on their tails or sides, but 2 of the fish were thoroughly sprinkled, the spots swelling even around their eyes, like pimples pressing against their glassy black corneas. It was spreading, she realized. Google told her they had an infestation, a parasite that burrowed through their tissue, clustered in their gills, burst out into the water, and swam forth to find new hosts. She went to the big box pet store to buy the necessary medicine. She could not imagine having to speak to Wayne or Zaw, having to ask their advice, having to admit she'd allowed this to happen. The box store was soothing and bright. It was the same everywhere and across time. As a child at this chain, Jude had been brought to point out which guinea pig she wanted, and there they were, even now, grunting over their alfalfa. A puppy rambled through the aisles, flopping his little tail. Jude pursued him, hoping to come close and touch him, but before she could do so, he peed in the aisle, beautifully and forgivably, and so his owner hauled him away. The fish section of this store was desolate. In tanks, back-painted blue and caked with scum at the corners, fish impelled themselves into motion under a decorative black light. Streaks of neon pink and yellow and green, with ragged bodies and eyes reflecting nothing, a bowling alley carpet come to life. It made her wonder again what kind of people were fish people, aside from children and dentists. Who would choose these animals over puppies or gerbils, or even the horrific parakeets shrieking in their single enclosure? At least Lincoln's fish were robust. It took only 2 doses of medicine from a bottle labeled Super Ick to fix the cichlid's parasite problem, but it took Jude longer to recover. She felt like she herself had been infected. Each splash of tank water was now, in her imagination, populated with microscopic, epidermis-burrowing, cyst-forming pupa. She couldn't explain it, but she even felt like she was somehow drinking contamination, as if all the pipes formed a marshy confusion under the house. It was that strange smell in the tap water, a buffalo smell. In her dreams, white spots rashed up on her fingers and eyelids. She looked for a mirror and knew already what she would see, because reaching over her shoulder, she could feel that the skin of her back had the buddy texture of a tongue. Too much time alone, it was unhealthy. She needed to get out of the house. This would be easiest if she could find someone to date. The rituals of dating were simpler than the rituals of participating in a hobby or finding a friend, which involved buying craft supplies, learning the rules of complex board games, submitting to astrology readings. Arranging a profile for herself was troublesome, since she no longer looked like the person she had been before her troubles with time, light, and space. She had to scroll back a ways to find a version of herself who looked either healthy or happy, a version of herself someone would want to mate with. The man asked to meet at a bubble tea place in downtown Buffalo. Downtown contained slab after slab of brutalist courthouses, jails, police stations, law offices, and bondsmen's storefronts. She thought maybe he worked downtown, maybe as a public defender, that maybe he would give her a local connection and introduce her to local attractions, but he didn't. He worked at an Amazon warehouse 30 minutes away, lived in a suburb slightly farther afield, and came into the city only on special occasions. He knew this area because there was a popcorn shop around the corner that his family always visited together just before Christmas. The rest of Buffalo he knew about as well as she did. He twisted his paper napkin as he spoke. She found his nervousness flattering. If he was not particularly charismatic or handsome, he might at least be afraid of her and put her on a pedestal. Jude was a poor conversationalist. She could only ask questions and quickly ran out of questions to ask. Without prompting, he kept coming back to the popcorn shop. He would go there every year with his aunts and uncles and cousins, always after the Christmas craft market, and together they would select the flavors for the multi-flavor tin that they would consume entirely when they unwrapped presents Christmas morning. At the shop, there was apple pie popcorn and red hot cinnamon popcorn and chocolate corn clusters. And at the Christmas craft market, they would get the annual mug and buy those huge pretzels that they sold there. He looked at her to see whether she had any knowledge of or opinion about those huge pretzels. And she looked away, deep into her cup. The black tapioca reminded her of fish eyes. She thought again about parasitic papules and knocked the last few pearls around with her pink-pointed straw. It's because of my family that I can't enjoy things, thought Jude. This is why my family wasn't allowed to watch the live stream. Other people's families imparted on them an uncontrollable nostalgia for the things they loved as children. Her family had mostly imparted on her a sense of the negative, of things that were not correct and not allowed. That was why her eldest brother had joined the National Guard. She thought Lincoln had had a childhood like this. He had been named after his father's favorite U.S. president. Could any boy named after a U.S. president grow up with the warmth of a loving family? Lincoln and I are two of a kind, she thought. We are cold-blooded people. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to a later section. She's been watching Lincoln's fish, but he never comes back from his vacation, and she's left in kind of a bad spot with like thousands of cichlids in his basement. So to make some extra money, she falls into this scheme with this fish store owner to go to Canada, buy these very desirable, expensive, endangered fish called the Asian arowana that you can buy and own legally in Canada, but which are illegal in the United States. So they're going to exploit this to smuggle these fish across the border and then jack up the prices and sell them on the U.S. black market. So Jude is just driven to Canada. It's a great scheme. Any of you can use it if you're down on your luck. So Jude's just driven to Canada. She's met her contact at a mall in the suburbs of Toronto, and she has gotten in his car. They drove down a wide avenue zoned entirely for nondescript industry. Long, low brick buildings with loading docks stretching into the distance. It was into one of these lots that Cyril turned. "Bring your suitcase," he said. A directory beside the door showed inscrutable business names: Cerny Int Trading, New Classic Apparel Distribution LLC, Martex Lighting Solutions. Inside, a hallway with a drop ceiling, the entire length of the building. The wheels of Jude's suitcase hissed on the gritty floor. Heavy rumbles rattled the lights in their plastic panels. Way down the hall, Jude could see something upright. The rumbling grew louder as they approached a pair of double doors painted with a maple leaf and the words Canada Enterprise Group. A bandsaw screamed. Then they walked on and the sound faded. There was so much building. The object was a plastic ficus, thickly covered in brown dust. Jude shivered a little. Cyril took out his keys and they stopped. The placard on the door said Suite 119. The room had a damp-spotted ceiling and a thick, amphibious smell. It was confusingly lit, dim red heat lamps on small enclosures, a blinding array of tube lights clamped over just one tank, a small high window. 7 black vats spanned the space. They were scaffolded in a network of PVC pipes, trickling, dripping, connected at one end of the room to a work sink and at the other to a gurgling drain. In the corner was an entire above-ground pool, its bulging sides printed with a sun and water pattern. The edge of Jude's suitcase clipped a plastic bin on the floor, and she heard a splashy scuttle inside. "You should take some turtles next time," said Cyril. He led her around the vats to a wall of tanks. "Turtles are easier to travel with than fish. Your boss might like to take a look at our price list. These ones are very popular." He stopped and tapped one finger above a tank. Inside, a dozen small turtles with tiny gray pig snouts flapped through the water, knocking into one another. Girls like them too. My niece wants one, but of course they're very rare. She doesn't know it's special. She just thinks it's cute. It is cute, said Jude. Tell your boss, said Cyril. They'd sell. I've pulled some of our smallest super reds over here. Let me take this thing off. He began to unclip the bright array of tube lights, saying, don't worry about the tanning. We only tan them a little, not enough to distress them. It really brings out the color. I wanted you to see them at their best. And you'll see, they grow into the color very well. They'll be super, super reds. There were 6 of them, thin and hand-sized, each delicately tapered, like the blade of a wind turbine. Their fins and tails fanned out in translucent crimson, their bodies a warm, pink-blushed gray. For a second, Jude thought she spotted some strange black fish among them, flapping its death throes on the bottom of the otherwise bare tank, but it was only a bit of rubber sealant that had come loose and was thrashing in the stream of the filter. Jude's gut fluttered too. It was simple. Start by pointing at any of them. That one, she'd say. She was supposed to pick the best and healthiest, but they all looked healthy enough. She would choose 3, and then she'd ask Cyril where the bathroom was. She had to pee so badly. But what if there wasn't a bathroom? There certainly wasn't one in here. Maybe Canada Enterprise Group had the only bathroom in the building, and she'd have to go in through those double doors, finding herself suddenly on an exposed manufacturing floor to the stares of the men manning the bandsaws, and they'd call out, hey, what are you doing here? Maybe in English, maybe in French. Did the French Canadians work in factories? Celine Dion was French Canadian. In Jude's mind, the French Canadians were all wrapped in a gossamer lilac mantle of class. Cyril shifted. He scratched his forehead with one knuckle. She hadn't been standing there long. She kept her face pointed toward the glass so that he wouldn't see that its color had changed. She knew she had turned either red or white. Her blood whistled through its vessels. Any but those 2, said Jude. Of course, said Cyril, leaning in close. Show me which ones. She pointed. One of them was a bit smaller. The other had a slight mark on its side, a crease or an indentation. Cyril nodded. He went to get a pair of nets from a stainless steel work table in the corner. The one is just a little younger, he was saying. Nothing wrong with him. He'll be ready soon. And the other got a scratch. It'll heal up by the next time I see you. I could give you a small discount if you wanted to take it today. Jude didn't answer. All her valves were fluttering loose. Sometimes valves abruptly burst, like her high school gym teacher's wife who had an aneurysm one day, and poof, that was it. But you're right, said Cyril. He was working in the top of the tank, tearing off a bag from a plastic roll and dipping it into the water. You want to make your boss happy. You don't know if he'll feel the same way you do, that the fish will heal up and you'll have made a bargain. No surprises on your first trip. It's better not to risk it. You'll see, the next time you come back, the same fish, you won't be able to tell them apart from the others. He just got picked on a little, that's all. The arowanas went ricocheting away from the nets as he dipped them into the water. Cyril slowly cornered them, using the smaller net to single out a victim and drive it towards the larger one. He transferred each catch to its own bag and loosely tied the tops. Silver and red, rippled, distorted. We always add oxygen, he said, carrying the 3 bags to the work table. You might not have far to go, but you know, I don't know where you're going. So you can't be too safe, I think. Jude watched him attach each bag to an ominous green canister and inflate it slightly. Now the bags looked like a small bunch of balloons. She hoped they would still fit in the suitcase. Something big broke the surface of the above-ground pool behind them and sent a slap of water scattering across the floor. A cold drop landed on Jude's arm. She turned in time to see the large greenish edge of something twisting back under the chop. Only then did she notice that all the vats had netting stretched over the top. What was that? She said. Cyril was smiling at the vat. It was a strange smile, one that Jude recognized the character of. It was the same smile Anjali got when she was talking about her child psychology professor, the dreamy one whom everyone called Berg. Office hours with Berg. Would Berg supervise her senior project? Did Berg have a girlfriend? Berg, Anjali would say, staring out the window with that small private smile, beyond which some scene of distant yet wildly possessive admiration was playing visibly on the surface of her eyes. Too big for you to take on this trip, said Cyril. Next time, you can watch me feed them. Bring the suitcase over here? The surface rippled, but nothing else appeared. Fish in the case, swaddled in bubble wrap, zip. The paper bag with the cash in it melted a little on contact with Jude's sweaty hands. $2,000 apiece, said Cyril. That's 6 total. They counted it out together onto the work table. There were little drops of water left over from the bagging. Cyril wiped these clean with the edge of his hand, then his sleeve so the bills wouldn't get damp. Then he recounted them, wadded the cash unceremoniously into his jacket pocket, and stuck out his hand. Jude shook it. His palm was still wet, so there was no way he could tell how badly she was sweating. She forgot to smoke the fresh cigarette that Cyril handed her once they were back in the car, but that was all right, because Cyril had forgotten to light it. Jude was focused on her leg, which had begun juddering slightly of its own accord. By the time she noticed the cigarette between her fingers, she hid it in her coat pocket, ashamed. The effort it took not to pee was so sustained and intense that it was not experientially dissimilar from peeing, and she was terrified that any moment of relief or the adjustment of tension in any aspect of her being would mean that she had already peed without realizing it, so that when Cyril asked her about hockey and gas prices, she had to stop for a moment to collect herself and scan her body before she opened her mouth, then do the same thing immediately afterward. In the parking lot of the mall, Cyril lifted the suitcase out of the back of his car and transferred it to hers. I have to go to the bathroom. It was nice meeting you. Bye, she blurted, giving a hysterical, jaunty wave across the roof of Cyril's car. Running would put too much pressure on her fragile bladder. She glided. She was having an out-of-body experience, except for it was the opposite, the experience of being nowhere but her body. The mall, kiosks, unbearable gray tile, unbearable skylights, the bathroom, dingy green. I can't believe, thought Jude, landing on the toilet. I just can't believe, she thought, peeing so forcefully that she was forced to cry, which she did, suddenly, putting her head down between her bare, trembling knees as if assuming the crash position, as if peeing weren't enough, as if she had taken things too far and needed to be wrung out to the core. Now there was nothing but fear inside her, a bursting fear for which there was no outlet, none at all. There was nothing to do. There were 3 fish and 3 bags in the suitcase in her car, and she'd already paid for them, and she couldn't return them, even if she wanted to. And it was cool out. She couldn't leave them long. She had to go that very moment to warm the car up, at least, and then she would think of what to do next. And she stood, wiping her eyes on a square of industrial tissue that dissolved to a pulp. But there was only one thing to do, which was to go back to Buffalo, to cross the border. She thought the word border and found she could not picture one. Border. She pictured the manufacturing floor of Canada Enterprise Group instead, all those irritated eyes turned up from the machinery. She saw it as clearly as if she had really been there, and yet she couldn't picture the border where she had been just a few hours ago. My life is a nightmare, she thought suddenly, standing as lifelessly and slumped as a coat on a coat hook. No, of course she could picture the border. Cars, booths, windows, the black and yellow line. There really was a coat on the coat hook, not Jude's. It was a thin navy jacket, though its pockets were a stripy blue and white material. And in the wallet, the driver's license was also blue, a blue Ontario driver's license for a woman named Ginny Huang, who didn't look very nice and didn't look like she'd miss a blue bill for $5 Canadian. There was no reason for Jude not to have a $5 Canadian bill of her own. Her fingers brushed Cyril's unsmoked cigarette as she put the money in her pocket. She had to turn on the heat in the car, and she had to leave Canada, because although she was not yet a smuggler, she was now a thief. She splashed water on her face in the mirror. Her eyes looked normal enough. She hadn't cried much after all. At one of the kiosks in the gleaming hallway, she saw a row of lighters laid out like jewelry on a black velvet tray. She bought a Canadian flag lighter with her blue Canadian bill. If she had to go to the car and start the engine, she would, so she did. She didn't touch the suitcase and didn't check on the fish. They weren't going far after all. On the highway, she became desperately thirsty. Her throat made a clicking sound when she swallowed. There was so much traffic, more traffic than she would have ever imagined if someone asked her to imagine the city Toronto. She pulled off and found a Tim Hortons drive-thru for a refresher. And then 20 minutes later, she pulled off at another Tim Hortons to pee. She was worried she might have permanently damaged her entire pee system. To her horror, she began to cry again on the toilet. But only for a moment or two, like one of those cases of hiccups that never makes it past the first dry gulps. Maybe fear was something the body needed to flush out, like stomach flu. She ordered another refresher. A friendly Canadian man watched her order, then said brightly, "Getting kind of cold out for that." She remembered the heater and hurried back to the car. She couldn't think of what to say to the border guard. For example, if he said, well, she'd just have to see what he said. After all, Cyril had asked her all kinds of questions, which she'd responded to the way any person would. She found his cigarette again in her pocket and the Canadian flag lighter in the other. She was passing the same vineyards as earlier, the same eerily open airspace, but this time the map was directing her to the Rainbow Bridge, the crossing above Niagara Falls. There was a white stack on the horizon, like the smoke from an enormous explosion. Then there were signs, other signs, signs warning she was heading toward the United States, and then she was in line at the border. Her car had stopped on the bridge. The United States was a few sorrowful buildings, a sandstone tower, a line of booths ahead of her. She felt as if she had missed something, were missing something, but the cigarette and the lighter were still in her pocket. She rolled down her window. It was colder now, especially with the harsh damp blowing up out of the Niagara basin. It was finally autumn, really almost winter. From this distance, the falls had nothing important to say. She knew how to smoke and drive. She'd seen it done in movies. The cigarette was held in the hand that dangled out the window against the car door, then occasionally lifted to the lips. In the car next to her, an older woman rolled up the passenger window. If Jude had to make a snap judgment, she would have called her an American because her haircut was the kind you'd see in an American church, wiry, flippy, copper-dyed. The woman glanced across at Jude, then averted her eyes. She wouldn't look back, no matter how long Jude stared. "Drive up," the border guard shouted. The Americans were a more secure people than the Canadians. They had all kinds of blind, venomous-looking equipment lining their lanes. Jude stubbed her cigarette in the ice of her refresher and handed across her passport. "All the windows down, please," the man said. His eyes barely touched the red suitcase in the back seat. Lopez, 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 his name in silver capitals on the breast of his tactical vest. She kept her eyes there, then looked up. "Any purchases?" "This," she said. She held up the lighter and turned it so he could see the flag on both sides. "And a Tim Hortons refresher?" The guard smiled at his keyboard. He typed something, then stamped and returned her passport. "They discontinue them in winter," he said. "No," said Jude. "Really?" "Have a nice night, ma'am." "After news like that?" But he was done talking. She eased off the brakes and onto the gas. The gates and stripes and pull-offs for inspection were passing and then gone. The lid was lifting from her skull. She was a loose association of materials. She was on American soil. The gorge was behind her. The street was in front of her. The honey locust trees by the garage were taking on their afternoon gold. The numbers were in miles per hour. The casino, the parking lot, a party bus in the right lane, thumping bass. She wanted, for the first time in years, it seemed, to listen to music. Thank you. I also have the pleasure of introducing to the stage first-year poet Nico Amador.
What a great lineup tonight. It's my great pleasure to introduce Ty Raso, a second-year poetry fellow here at the Fine Arts Work Center, who will be reading from her newest project, Light Pretending to Be Light, a genre-expansive memoir that is as bold and original formally as it is in its observations. Poetry and memoir are often, if not primarily, a reckoning with the self, a return to the troubling aspects of our experience, to the yet-to-be-reconciled tensions that sit around our identities, the fractures and absences that exist when shame, taboo, or the real threat of violence overwhelm the body's lucid dreaming. Exposing these vulnerabilities and surrendering them to the interpretation of others is full of risk. And because of that, there's always the temptation to make yourself the uncomplicated and empathetic main character in the narrative of your own life. For example, I could tell you about my coming out process or about a childhood trauma, a bad date, the epiphanic sensation of swimming topless for the first time after surgery. Or I could tell you about the UTI I got after my last hookup, that this week I briefly considered spending $128 on a basic t-shirt, about my early fixation with horses. In other words, an honest representation is still a curated one. Ty's poetics resist the immediate reward of positioning herself within the easily recognized hero-victim frame in favor of a more sophisticated presentation. Even at 9, I knew that every word was a game, writes Ty. And in this work, Ty games language to hold a simultaneity of selves in tension, a past and present self, an interior and aspirational self, a projected upon self, a self that moves in real and virtual space through many different avatars, all explored with microscopic scrutiny. When he first called me his girlfriend, I picked my favorite scab until the underskin shimmered like sugar, writes Ty. I chewed a pencil until it smelled too much like the inside of me. I find the vivid accuracy of Ty's portraiture enviably confronting, especially because I never sense any impulse to punish herself or alienate others for the sake of spectacle. Underneath it all is an ultimately relatable and generous suggestion of what it means to be human and whole. By making the strange familiar and the familiar strange, Ty exposes what the Palestinian writer Isabel Hamad calls the consoling fiction of a fixed identity, and challenges us to embrace our own weirdness, our tics and flawed obsessions, the way desire can make us mysterious and unpredictable, even to ourselves. Ty Raso's work has been supported by the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop, the Community of Writers Poetry Workshop, and the Tin House Summer Workshop. You can find her writing in Poetry Magazine, Electric Literature, the Detroit Journal, the Offing, and elsewhere. And I hope, after hearing this reading tonight, you'll also keep your eyes out for Mirror Would Be a Beautiful Name for a Child, her debut poetry collection, which is forthcoming with Noemi Press in 2027. Please welcome Ty to the stage.
Okay, hi. So happy National Poetry Month, and happy belated Trans Day of Visibility. So you're kind of giving, woo! You're kind of getting a 2-for-1. So, okay. Is it okay if I thank people? Okay. I don't know what it is. Like having a microphone just makes me want to thank people. Okay. So yeah, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you to FOC, everyone who works here and makes such a beautiful, generous space possible. So Naya, Terry, Devin, Daisy, Nat, Joe, Susan, David, Alexis, Sharon, Jerome, and Josh. I don't think I forgot anybody. Thank you to my cohort for being such a gorgeous community to be in and with. Thank you to Callan, Anne, and Ariel for sharing tonight with me. Thank you, Nico, for introducing me. Thank you to my fellow poetry fellows for our generative and careful workshops. Thank you to God or whoever created a poetry cohort this year where the trans poets outnumbered the cis poets. Thank you to my, yes. We clap for that. So thank you to my first cohort, the year of 2023, 2024. Thank you to everyone whom I sent the link to who is tuning into the live stream tonight. And thank you even if you couldn't make it, and thank you if you see this later on YouTube, and thank you if you never see it. Thank you to Juliet at the Provincetown Independent who wrote my tender and thoughtful profile of me and my work. Thank you to 6 Fish Down, my apartment, where I wrote 2 books, and thank you to me, because I did that. Okay. So I do have a book coming out next year. I'm not going to be reading from that. I'll be reading instead from like a newer project, like Nico said, a kind of book-length, prosy, hybrid creature. I think of this project as sort of the evil twin of my first book. So if you like what I read tonight, you're obligated to buy my book when it comes out October 12th, 2027. Remember that. And I won't give you much context because if you've ever been on the internet, you'll know what I'm talking about in my work. So it's called Light Pretending to be Light. What is the weight of the earth? What is the weight of water? What is the weight of the normal prostate? What is the weight of the largest turkey? What is the weight of the moon? What is the weight of your lungs? What is the weight of 1 cup of sugar? What is the weight of your eye? Dismemberment was a language I sought to learn. I Google normal penis and decide I will be young forever. Every penis in their little image room, the pouch of flesh sequencing it to the unseen body like a charm bracelet, a chorus of slits at each tip, some more eye-like, some more mouth-like. I am 9 years old, and the corners between the walls and the ceiling grow more reachable by the day. I have been a girl for as long as I can remember, or a girl-like animal, as I watch each penis fixed in light resemble a penis. Some were drawn in so much detail that they seemed impossible. Corpus cavernosum, corona, pubic symphysis, symphysis, symphysis. Even at 9, I knew that every word was a game. I kept scrolling and penises kept taking shape like birds in formation. If mine was broken, I could not discern how, but from most angles, a penis looked overwhelmed by thought, its neck weighed like a lamp, its gaze soft like a teardrop. Pity was a name I thought everybody wore. The room had no mirrors, so every form only occurred once. When the phone rang, the images failed to load, boxed out in black like boxes, the penises suspended between code and light. When a computer screen darkens, it fisheyes your reflection. I am certain I did not see me looking at my looking. I watch a time lapse of a flower tearing open its seed, the sky undecided whether it's day or night. If I scroll down, the video pauses like a bandage. If I let the video finish, it loops, stitching the dirt shut like a closet. Once, a boy I had only seen in motion sent me pictures of my apartment from the outside, my shadow holding the window closed. Before he knew me, he said he loved me. He told me often and used many phone numbers. In some of the pictures, you could see my body interrupting the light on its way to the curtain. In some, there was no evidence of my being home. I imagined myself on the bed, my body open like a drawer. Every time I looked out my window, I was hungry at the absence of trees, how naked the street was with street light. On a website, I declared myself a woman. I was 11 and did not expect anyone to trust me with their life, the computer constantly exhaling warm breath like a corpse or a bed. Many of the website's people believed I was a woman, though most of them were men, and would choose their language carefully when speaking toward me, as if the distance between us was made of glass. When I was 11, my mother broke up with God, and guilt was a pet only I knew how to feed. My profile picture on the website was Kirby, a being who could become whatever they consumed. I thought about dying every time I thought about dying. I imagined there was a bell around my neck that had lost its sound-making tongue. On the website where I was successfully a woman, I posted poems about bleeding out of my mouth, described it like aerial acrobatics, called it rain. The woman I was and I had the same name. She said she chose it. I chewed the rubber of an eraser until it smelled too much like the inside of me. My stalker had a name and a face. If I concentrated, I could build his face in the shadows of my memory. I imagined my mind's eye had a mouse cursor that pulled his cheeks to the appropriate sunkenness, like poaching an egg. A brush tool to layer the eggplant fists under his eyes. If I had to guess, his eyes were blue, like car windows. I never thought I deserved the word stalker. What he did to me, or about me, was not for desire, I convinced myself. I spent much of my time playing a video game where home-owning animals depended on you, let you rewrite their speech. A dog wrapped entirely in bandages approached me and said he was contemplating a move to a different island. Stay, I told him. His trust for me was coded and therefore inevitable like suffocation. Because there was a window in my bedroom, I would often sleep in the bathtub where the night light drew rabbit ears on the locked door. The pipes made a noise like they were trying to make no noise at all. This photo comes from a new number, me searching for my keys in front of the gate in front of my apartment building. My one hand seems upset, as if we've gone over this 100 times, the other hand determined, shadowed like a rabbit in my bag. If I look at the image long enough, I can imagine it in motion. Hear the mechanical unclicking of the gate, the unchirping of the system recognizing the fob, the unbreathing of the lobby's overhead light. The quality of this image was more articulated, the angle slightly elevated. He was closer and higher than usual. My glasses hang at the edge of my nose like deja vu. If I look at a photo of myself for too long, I do a kind of surgery. I peel my forehead back, moon down the hairline, wash the jawline, round the cheeks, unlace the stubble, making a cave around my mouth. I had, at minimum, 2 bodies. The homeowning animals in the video game worry for their sick neighbor, a wolf in a green sweater. She shivers alone in her house, walking from wall to wall like a longing. I leave every light in the apartment unlit, the only light drooling under the door from the hallway, sheer as a mask. There is a medicine for this kind of loneliness, I tell the wolf. She is programmed to believe me. I wipe my save file to create a new island. The homeowning animals I knew as my neighbors, a crocodile, a sheep, an elephant, a dog, a pig, a mouse, a wolf, return silently to code like dust. The new island half dust, the sky blue, the water blue. This one grows apples, so I wipe the save data. The new island half dust, the sky blue, the water blue, the stars blue. This one grows oranges. The weeds fill the grass with teeth. I am a girl this time. My avatar's hair handlebarring off her skull like a cliff. A frog and a deer walk on their 2 legs and seem lost like eyes. Given the option to name myself, I do. Given the option to name the island, I do. Everyone speaks to me as if I am incapable of hurting them. I catch a butterfly. I tear, root by root, the weeds. The timeline buzzes with clips of soft materials being extruded. A waxy blue ball meets pressure, meets 100 hole-sized holes, becomes 100 strands of itself, like a universe. I replay the tutorial of how to self-inject estradiol and allow my nakedness to spread on the floor. Often, I will let 2 devices feed me light simultaneously. The phone cascades a buffer of images while the computer speaks to the room. My desire to be dismembered transformed into a desire to be filled. My desire to be filled transformed into a desire to be recognized. The woman in the tutorial's eyes never appear on screen. A shot of her hands, 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 a shot of her back, her hand, the syringe emptying like a breath. It is okay to be fragmented. Even the people I love have yet to see my true face. I feel more pain removing the needle than puncturing with it, the blood carefully lifting its head from the hole like a sleeping animal. For what it's worth, even I have yet to see my true face. I thought my loneliness kept others safe. The people on the website decided that I wasn't a woman, called me a liar, a man, a catfish, photoshopped a Kirby onto the neck of a bodybuilder whose thighs boated out like balloons or wigs. I was 11 and I loved the taste of the blood inside my cheeks, chewed and swollen and puckered like a pencil eraser. If I closed my eyes, I could see the blue disappearance of the computer light, each line thin as a promise. I could not decide if this was a kind of death. My failure as a woman was inevitable, I realized. Nobody had trusted me to name my suffering before. Like my body, the computer was a shared object. I was 11 and everything had an outline which made it end at its outline. The water in the glass rippled as I typed. The glass was the only thing keeping the water from abandoning itself. To stem the bleeding, I had to clog my nostrils with cotton balls for much of the year. When I removed them, they would be shrunken and pink like flesh. Does it hurt to have sex? Does it only rain at night? Does it hurt to have a cavity removed? Does anyone like licorice? Do you remember it when you die? Do cicadas sleep? Do eyelashes grow back? Do you remember me, scam? Is there school tomorrow? Is there anything smaller than an atom? Is there life on the moon? Is there rain? Is there life after love lyrics? Is there sound in space? Is there life after death? Is there water and blood? Is there such a thing as too much sleep? Is there a way to get rid of scars? Is there someone I can talk to? Is there someone else? What do you call pomegranate seeds? What do you call the ability to survive? What do you call the inability to feel pleasure? What do you call those pictures that change when you move? My male skeleton visits me in my dreams and reminds me to eat loose meat on my male skeleton's jaw like an hourglass. My phone camera places a small yellow box around my face as I study my asymmetry. I Google what is the weight of light and instantly feel stupid about it. Light may not have rest mass, light may not have rest, so the me held in the yellow box behind the light of my phone screen is weightless because she cannot rest, restless because she cannot weigh. She does not hear the refrigerator humming empty like a bathtub. She does not feel the floor thrumming with the sound. I have accepted a position. I had the honor of being. After much deliberation, the wait is over. Thank you for your order. After much discussion, we apologize for the delay. Please say hello, a new sign-in on your device. We hope you'll join us. I am writing on behalf of, I am out of office. Please do not reply to this message. Happy Friday, happy end of days, happy to finally connect. You know email? My prerequisite hour spent Googling, can insert animal here feel love? And many answers explain, yes, wolves can show loyalty. Yes, humans can be a flytrap. The tutorial advises to mix sugar and syrup with an adhesive, and I spend the afternoon licking the killing mixture off my fingers. Dear Recaptcha, it is a beautiful day to be not a robot, an image without a traffic light. I have proven myself flesh at your altar of boxes. It is a beautiful day to be an image torn into multiple images like the night sky or a pill bottle, though Recaptcha, I swapped over to estrogen injections, the needle between my flesh and my flesh like a needle. My dear Recaptcha, I worry I am too esoteric to be loved, draped in the wet of bathroom light, using the soft knife of my mind to draw a grid on my face, this square with woman, this square without, this square I, this square I. Dear Recaptcha, I click the box that says remember me. I click the box that says remember me. Sometimes I forget that I have beautiful eyes because of all the time they spend distinguishing images, displaying my reflection open like a crosswalk, but really, look at my eyes, how the screen light twinkles across them like a city skyline, the white ink infleshed by veins, pink as veins, the iris clutching the pupil like a child. Quiet quitting my gender reads a note on the app designed to look like paper. I wrote it with a stylus which emulates the experience of a pen, its body smooth and waxy like language. I drop a tablet in water and watch it carbonate, the sound peeling the skin behind my ears. Of course, my tongue has been numbed to its own weight. I post a photo celebrating my new small breasts, and instantly it's liked by several bots with serial numbers like strings at the end of their names. One day, beauty will forgive me. This is the ringtone I hear when only you call. Just circling back on this, thank you for reaching out. Have you considered transferring your debt? This is what you missed. Pay off your debt with a loan. Your username was recovered. We picked these deals out just for you. Dear friend, dear one, dear account holder, dear first name, last name, dear community, dear valued customer, dear all, yours, 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 still yours, yours in service, yours too, yours always. Click here to continue your search. Last chance to save. I have missed you. It's not too late. This is an attempt to collect a debt. Check if you qualify for forgiveness. The woman in the tutorial says to feel the hallway of your throat change shape, her every vowel like an apple falling from a tree. She says larynx, lips, tongue, whisper every day for 30 minutes when it's almost silent, until there is no tension, until the neck understands the room of your voice. The woman in the tutorial says to read to yourself like a bedsheet. An unknown number calls me and leaves a message, the transcription reading, I am so lonely. I think of you often. I want to go to the YMCA with you. I'm sad to swim alone. I repeat the words in my almost silent whisper like a match. I am so lonely. I think of you often. I want to go to the YMCA with you. I'm sad to swim alone. The unknown number calls again but leaves no message, ringing once, then twice, quaking the desk like a muscle. I picture a man in a locker room, smooth as a mannequin, the steam swallowing his face, sad to swim alone. In my unlearning, I was bright and disappearing as chlorine. I think of you often, I repeat in the bathroom. The tile attempted my reflection in the confidence of the almost light. Not a body, but its idea. Not an idea, but its body. The men on the website call me a trap. They debate who should have access first to my mouth, their penis brushing my teeth, or spreading liquid ghosts on my lips, ask where I live. I Google, is cum alive, and feel every hair on my body touch my body. I am 12 years old, and the room is a different shape, in a different state, but the sun still finds me here, sends its needles to bounce from wall to wall. The men say they want to me, the letters becoming broken windows, a 4-letter word for to take apart, a 4-letter word for to fill with a body. This year, I began a list of exits, the door, the door, the door, the door, the door, the head-sized window as high as the light. The men have never seen my eyes, my shoulders, the polka dot scars on my thigh with flesh bright like glazed donuts. I play a game where a man with no face and a rusted sword pursues me from room to room, the walls covered in skin. Sometimes I let him catch me, pierce me like a butterfly. It's so careful, the way he makes an opening of me. And when I return to my body, there are no wounds, every part of me sealed shut like a blade. Each of the men on the website describes a fantasy. One with my hair and his teeth like a muzzle, one with his nails making pink fence posts on the back of my neck, his body pressing mine to the ground, my body like a mattress holding the shape of his body. I am 12 years old and I imagine my throat is full of hands. The men on the website have decided that I'm a fake girl, but a real object, that the glass of me fogs for them. I remained indecisive about death, whether I had already forgiven it. Daylight crawled across the wall like a man on all fours. The third man's fantasy was to plumb his tongue through my mouth, down the hall of my throat. I felt guilty knowing he would never get his tongue back, the hands would keep it like a weed. Everything I have learned about desire can fit in a fist, that it has something to do with shattering or being shattered. The first time the green bubble in my phone invited me to swim, I asked, "Who is this?" The second time, "What's your favorite stroke?" My question stayed unanswered, like deer paused in the road. The reply, "We could walk around the park." The question, "Who is this?" The reply, "I know you love the park." I was too busy. I had to complete my vocal exercises, to look through the mirror like a headlight, to submerge red halos of onion in sugared vinegar. By the end of the pickling process, the onions pinked, the vinegar pinked, the jar breathless like a fist. I hummed, threw my voice down my throat, shouted without opening my mouth. True, everything is a kind of practice. My mirrored mouth shaped like half a heart, my mirrored mouth closed like a paved trail. True, I love the park. If I went missing, there would be no one to water the peace lily. There would be no one to worship this mirror like a scalpel. I read a story about a cave that was not worth repeating. In it, truth was light, or the world was light, or light was light, all things touched by unknowing like skin. The woman in the telehealth video call nods as I describe what mirrors do to me, her face a studied feeling, pixelated. Yes, I say. No, I say. I wait, my tongue focusing on itself like a key. Years, I say. As long as I can remember, I say. We nod like wooden birds at the same time. She is one of the few people I have told the truth. I know it must change, I say, because I would not miss myself if I were dead. She writes something down and writes something down, and I see car lights skim her face, the shadows behind her stretching like shadows, then shrinking like shadows, the silence holding me like a tear. The dry hole in my throat could not be swallowed, no matter how many times I tried. My desire to be filled transformed into a desire to be recognized. I was comforted that what she heard was my voice rebuilt by speakers, my face cast in computer light in her office, that there was all this representation between us, that a photograph and a memory are different objects. She writes something down and writes something down as I watch myself speak like a doll, my computer reflection's eyes half open like lips. In the story, there was a world, and there was another world, and there was a mouth-shaped opening or emptiness between them. I had no choice but to haunt myself. I ran in place until my sweat held my shape like a ring of light, the floor an unfolded wall. It's not that I wanted to disappear, but that I was never present to begin with. The green bubble in my phone asked me to come outside, the sun touching the long tongue of the earth, pinking the sky like a throat. I thought about it. I thought about the wind, what it would do in a glass bottle, how it would feel to be skinned and left in the low breath of the evening. My haunting when it's planned. My body remembered itself and forgot itself and remembered itself, a gulp of water moving like a stone. Come outside, please, the green bubble said. I thought I was kind. I undressed and my clothes were heavy, wet with salt, landed in a pile like ghosts. I had not eaten that day, the last, and felt a door inside me, though I could not tell if it was opening or closing. My hunger washed its hands over and over again like the moon. My hunger watched me become my hunger, watched me watch like smoke the becoming. The lights were on, spilled like milk on the wall. The whole time, my breath was silent. I am 13 years old and he describes himself. Red hair, enough muscles, thin lips helmeted by a campfire-colored beard. This, a kind of dismemberment. We came here often, the keyboard making the sound of teeth being dropped on the table. When he first called me his girlfriend, I picked my favorite scab until the underskin shimmered like sugar. I realized desire was a screen that rearranged light into light. Since I didn't know his true name, his true face, I imagined a hole being filled with smaller, more precious holes. The Skype chat called a room, a placeless place. My shoulders curled forward like shoulders, the body an afterthought. We hadn't discussed this, the girlfriend thing. After, mirrors seemed deeper, like a person approaching. After, I let him say it, let myself be given something to be called, like a drawing of a woman. That he didn't know my true name. The image of either a duck or a rabbit, depending on the intention of the looking. Because I wanted to be harmless, I was jealous of shadows. It was easier to assume I was always being seen, so I kept my hands in plain sight like walls. Since I abandoned myself, there was nothing left for others to abandon. The cicada in my bathtub struggled to free itself from its skin, and I watched it like a memory. The woman in the tutorial says to pinch the fat where you plan to inject your estradiol, compares the fat to dough, her thumb and finger reaching toward each other through the pinched comma of flesh. It's true, there was more of me than I thought there was, the old bruises marigolding. I wore myself like a coat, and the cicada did its best to let instinct reveal it inside out. There was only so much I could do, I told myself. Beneath the paint on the wall, there was more paint on the wall. The woman in the tutorial reminds me that the estradiol will leave the needle slower than you might expect, the serum clear as a vein. At this point, I needed no direction. My body operated by instinct like a present tense verb. I decided, finally, to be familiar to myself. The cicada keyed its wings on the porcelain, and it sounded just like the sound of wings on porcelain. I could not describe it, even if I wanted to. The game asks you to decide on a set of genitals. It felt like being loaned a body, green above and below the half-made avatar, like pressing your face to a window. I was in my underwear in both bodies. I have a pill bottle full of paintbrushes. I made several choices. We could be described as making eye contact. There was a certain droning in the walls. I was used to it, like skin. I took off what was left of her clothes. Maybe rebirth, a violent game. I wanted to be resembled. I had to lower the graphic settings, reducing the amount of edges. In a pinch, a polished enough dagger could serve as a mirror. I liked the music. I had plenty of time. My neighbors and their loud, theatrical sex. I could tell they had characters they liked to play. A judge, a spy, a bodyguard, a veterinarian. Once, a painter and a model. We shared a wall I put nails through. A violent game. The enemies and I taking turns, trading sword swings like haircuts. It felt intimate and remote, like sending and receiving mail. I enjoyed clothing the hardwood with blood. I imagined it was like going to the grocery store, selecting the right cut of meat. All the fragmented bodies beneath plastic like face masks. I haven't eaten meat since I was a child. I don't miss the taste, but I do miss feeling large. The heater let off a rust smell. I could convince myself it was alive. It touched the walls with its stained fingers. The feral cat returned with its usual dead birds. I pretend to understand what she says. Like God, probably. Rot pooled at the bottom of the fridge, the color of bones left out to dry. I built a U out of the mirrors in my skull, like turn-based combat. We got an email about the hornet's nest in between the doors. No subject. You told me about your firefly jar, light like stitches between light. It was not my first hornet's nest. I have been many places. Walls seem to be the common denominator, and light, sound. I closed the windows, put on the room's seeing glasses. You were cold, I noticed. Now I make you into a dog. I try to think of us as equals. Fail. Your imaginary ear satelliting the apartment. You are sensitive to sounds that don't stick to me, like glue peeling off skin in a dry, tender layer. The avatar idles, checks her boots, adjusts her bag. She seems aware of the weight she carries. It is suggestive of having a body, as the shape of a chair, the half mouth I leave when I stand. I ignored you for part of the day. Our attention found a meeting place, the moon, which felt too convenient, like an especially loud sound. It made the room no brighter. It reminded me of light. I study advertisements for bodies like mine. Furniture, beer, erectile dysfunction subscription services, a body antidepressed under thumbprint sunlight like a bug allowed to live. Not even my most apologetic obsession or perverse. I imagine you urgeless. Food delivery service advertising bottom-friendly menus. A peach is juiced by a giant hand, its blood clear, cartoon. The peach seems to enjoy it. Eyes Xing like needles leaving skin. A violent game. The avatar kissed and fucked. It was rhythmless, which made it seem real. Two bodies with hands, 4 hands plucking the dark like grapes. Unlike me, she closes her eyes. The intake form was exhaustive. I resist the compulsion to invent experiences, like the television in a dentist's office. Drew faces on the steamed mirror, waited for you to find them. I missed the childhood I hated, like running with a knife. If the avatar died, the world returned to an earlier version of itself. The body reattached to the body. I couldn't prove that she had no memory of the pain. The siren light painted the ceiling red. There were birds on wires. There were baby names listed on the screen. I did laundry. The machine in my window turned air into air. It's very easy to explain, actually. I fell in love with a wall. I cheated on that wall with another wall. It was like being drawn and quartered. It was like how I used you as a bridge or a blank. The avatar ate berries, had no visible scars. She dreamed of blood like a wolf or a womb, maybe rebirth. How did we get here, you asked. For some reason, I thought you meant the body. How do you know if you can sing, you can donate blood, you're dehydrated, you're allergic to alcohol, lightning is close, he really loves you song, eyeshadow is expired, your piercing is infected, you're losing fat, you're losing too much blood, it is real honey, a cat is a boy or a girl, peaches are ripe, it's working, it will be a good sunset. I had sympathy for the killer, Miss Texas Chainsaw spinning in her tight coat like ice in lemonade. I missed him, knew I shouldn't, slept like a princess on a bed of glass. Oh well, now I pretend to be beautiful and make a mess. This dress I'll have to return. I bargain with my phone to convince me I have a face, a waist, eyes green as bathwater. She tried her best, a minimum of 3 of me in the room. The body in the photo could recognize the body in the mirror. The body in the body brewing espresso on the stove. The 3 bodies are coworkers. The 3 bodies studying each other in a polite hush like dishware. You know who you look like? He would ask me. I've been told that before, I answered. The killer wearing someone else's face, applying lipstick, blush like doll mouths, eyeshadow. I'm not ashamed to say I cried. I couldn't help it. Music was playing. The story ended. I wish I was kinder. The body in the photo's perfect little hands, her lip-shaped lips. Viral detransitioner thanks Jesus, cries on camera, eyes pink as fingernails, shaves head and looks like an egg. My egg broke and yolk filled the streets, amoebaed through the sewers, got cooked by the sun, fluffy as cigarette smoke. I ran out of things to distract myself with, so the truth fell out of me like a splinter. I named the Wi-Fi and set the password. I crossed the room to the other side of the room to look at the other side of the room. My egg fed dozens and everyone went home with leftovers. The metaphor is lost on me. My old body was in the dream, hitchhiking on the roadside like used furniture, flea-sized in the rearview mirror. The symbolism felt too obvious. I took a video of the rain with my phone. Look at the way it blanks on the glass. I woke up with a cold, my womanhood popcorning plasma in my throat like champagne. It was daytime, spring shattering outside in slow motion. I filled a tissue with my excess womanhood and placed it at the top of the trash. It was basically magic, my nose refilling with womanhood like blood. The previously owned faux fur coat I ordered online arrived, so I try it on and go to the museum of my full-length mirror. I check myself out like a library book, my womanhood shining between my nose and my lip like a puzzle piece. It all makes sense. The body can't really leave itself. Believe me, I tried. I gave up on vocal feminization. I gave up on the farming video game. I still watch the tutorials, the woman's dandelion mouth. I read the Someday I'll Love Frank O'Hara poem on my phone. I eat my phone and it tastes like nothing, not even a phone. I was asleep for 25 years like a spare tire or a self-portrait. When I woke up, everything was something, even me in my men's underwear and loose bra like a satellite dish. I realized I had to exist in order to exist. The woman in the tutorial says to imagine there's a sheet of paper on your vocal cords. I used to beg for forgiveness. Now I shop online. I imagine a sheet of paper on my vocal cords. I get used to being beautiful. I click the female box. Thank you. It took a long time to get here. The construction noise like bones in a blender, the men in coats yellow as oranges. In the new apartment, I use the kitchen. I fill the vase with water, cloudy it with sugar like the white space at the bottom of a page. There is nothing profound in the room, not even the sunlight broken into a grid by the window, not even the check mark in the female box. The flowers dying prettily in the blue vase, leaning against each other like directions to a party. There was a question I forgot to ask. If it's important, I'll remember it. I thought it would be impossible to digitize the home videos. Here I was, eating cereal. Here I was, my hand under running water. Here I was, crayoning the wall like a migraine or confetti. The screen light drew my onion head, my girl toes like cat treats, my small chest infant-sized like a Christmas ornament. I thought pity would fill my throat like saliva. I bought a device that turned images into images. I missed my injection. I watch myself watch television. I was never particularly good at seeing myself, but the directions were easy to follow. Rip to USB and back up to external drive, the software to frame. If an image is a memory, then the body the image remembers no longer exists. But the fact of the light and the fact of my watching the fact of the light. I had it all wrong. The light of her blowing spit bubbles over her tongue, then the light of her concealing her mouth with the light of her fingers. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Ariel and Ty, for those fantastic readings, and Ashley and Nico for those thoughtful introductions. We invite you to hang out here until 8 p.m., enjoy more refreshments and food, and spend more time in the gallery and with our fellows. Callan and Ann's shows will be on view in the gallery until Sunday, April 12th. Please spread the word. The gallery is open Monday through Friday from 10 to 5 p.m. and by appointment on the weekend. Our next and final Fellow Friday showcase event will take place on Friday, April 17th, and will feature exhibitions by visual fellows Tess Oldfield and Michael Wolf. Yep. And readings by poetry fellow Pio Arango and fiction fellow Connor Greer. You can learn more about Fellow Fridays and our fellows on our website and in the weekly artist profile pieces published in the Provincetown Independent. Thanks again for joining tonight, and have a great rest of your evening.